Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Let's do a short invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Priyasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Pachatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today Sundar Chaitanya will be doing the summary.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Okay. This chapter is unfortunately huge, which means we cannot sit and relish and discuss. And because the last one was not live streamed, I'll quickly summarize for those who may watch the YouTube. In the last chapter, chapter 15, what happened was Chitraketu's son was killed in chapter 14. And in chapter 15, Narada and Angira came. Narada Muni and Angira Muni, they came and they instructed Chitraketu Maharaj. And they taught him the science of the soul in great detail. Along with that, they told him a few other things about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how the spirit soul comes into this world because of karma and daiva, that the Lord's glance as well as the actual actions of the living entity, the modes of material nature they're associated with. So the science of the soul, the science of reincarnation was discussed. And Narad Muni said at the end of that chapter that I will give you a mantra. And if you follow that mantra, you will be able to see the Lord in 7 days. And so we, of course, concluded that for us, Srila Prabhupada has given this Hare Krishna mantra. And with that, we can perceive the Lord in the present moment as well. So, in this chapter, chapter 16, King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Can I have the screen sharing rights, please?
Okay, 1 second. Yeah.
Okay. So, as we are discussing, yeah. Can you see this?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So, before we discuss Srimad Bhagavatam...
Prabhuji, we can see it, but can you make it a bit larger font?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
There we go. Is this better?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So, before we discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll just offer one more prayer. Nashtaprayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. So can we have a devotee to read from verse number 1 all the way till verse number 16, please?
Shama Shriji
Shama
Mataji.
Shriji Mataji.
All the way from States.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam.
Dandavat
Hare Krishna.
Pranam. Very
Please
nice
accept my
to hear
humble
you.
obeisances. Good, good. So far, so good. But your association is not it's minimal here. So I thought I got the opportunity today. So I thought
Yeah,
I'd join it.
thank you for giving your association.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for giving this opportunity. I'll read text 1 to 17. Text 1. Shri Shukdev Goswami said, My dear King Parikshit, by his mystic power, the great sage Narada brought the dead son into the vision of all the lamenting relatives and spoke as follows. Text 2. Narad Muni said, O living entity, all good fortune unto you. Just see your father and mother, all your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away. Because you died untimely, the balance of your lifetime still remains. Therefore, you may re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your life, surrounded by your friends and relatives, and accept the royal throne and all the opulences given by your father. Text 4. By the mystic power of Narad Muni, the living entity re-entered in the body, his dead body, for a short time, and spoke in reply to Narad Muni, requesting, he said, according to the results of my fruitive activities, I, the living being, transmigrates from one body to another, sometime going to the species of the demigod, sometimes to the species lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my parents, my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these people as my parents? Text 5. In the material world, which advances like a river that carries away the living entity, all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They all act neutrally. They meditate, they despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Nevertheless, despite these various transactions, one is permanent. No one is permanently related. Text 6. Just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another in due course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of his fruitive activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into various bodies in different species of life by one kind of father after another. Text 7. A few living entities are born in the human species, and others are born as animals. Although both are living entities, their relationships are impermanent. An animal may remain in the custody of a human being for some time, and then the same animal may be transferred to the possession of other human beings. As soon as the animal goes away, the former proprietor no longer has a sense of ownership. As long as the animal is in his possession, he certainly has an affinity for it. But as soon as the animal is sold, the affinity is lost. Text 8. Even though one living entity becomes connected with another because of a relationship based on bodies that are perishable, the living entity is eternal. Actually, it is the body that is born or lost, not the living entity. One should not accept that the living entity takes birth or dies. The living being actually has no relationship with so called fathers and mothers. As long as he appears as the son of a certain father and mother as a result of his past fruitive activities, he has a connection with the body given by that father and mother. Thus, he falsely accepts himself as their son and acts affectionately. After he dies, however, the relationship is finished. Under these circumstances, one should not be falsely involved with jubilation and lamentation. Text 9. The living entity is eternal and imperishable because he actually has no beginning and no end. He never takes birth or dies. He is the basic principle of all types of bodies. Yet he doesn't belong to the bodily category. The living being is so sublime that is equal in quality to the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, because he is extremely small, is prone to be illusioned by the external energy. and thus he creates various bodies for himself according to his different desires. Text 10. For this living entity, no one is dear, nor is anyone unfavorable. He makes no distinction between that which is his own and that which belongs to anyone else. He is one without a second. In other words, he is not affected by friends and enemies, well-wishers or mischief mongers. He is only an observer, a witness of the different qualities of man. Text 11. The Supreme Lord, the Atma, the creator of cause and effect, doesn't accept the happiness and distress that result from fruitive actions. He is completely independent of having to accept a material body because he has no material body. He is always neutral. The living entity, being part and parcel of the Lord, possesses his qualities in a minute quantity. Therefore, one should not be affected by lamentation. Text 12. Shri Shukdev Goswami continued, when the conditioned soul Jiva, in the form of Maharaj Chitraketu's son, had spoken in this way and then left, Chitraketu and other relatives of the dead son were all astonished. Thus they cut off the shackles of their affection, which was due to their relationship with him, and gave up their lamentation. Text 13. After the relatives had discharged their duties by performing the proper funeral ceremonies and burning the child's body, they gave up the affection that leads to illusion, lamentation, fear, and pain. Such affection is undoubtedly difficult to give up, but they gave it up very easily. Text 14. Queen Kartyaduti's co-wives who had poisoned the child were very much ashamed. They lost all their bodily luster. Without lamenting, O king, they remembered the instructions of Angira and gave up their ambition to bear children. Following the directions of the Brahmanas, they went to the bank of the Yamuna, where they bathed and atoned for their sinful activities. Text 15. Thus enlightened by the instructions of the Brahmanas, Angira and Narada, King Chitraketu became fully aware of spiritual knowledge. As an elephant becomes free from a muddy reservoir of water, King Chitraketu came out of the dark well of family life. Text 16. The king bathed in the water of Yamuna, and according to prescribed duties, he offered oblations of water to the forefather and demigods. Very gravely controlling his senses and mind, he then offered his respects and obeisances to the sons of Lord Brahma, Angira and Narada. Text 17. Thereafter, being very much pleased with Chitraketu, who was a self-controlled devotee and surrendered soul, Narada, the most powerful sage, spoke to him the following transcendental instruction. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you. Sorry, Mataji, that's a long read.
No, that's fine, Prabhuji. It's been a
Apologies.
long time. Yeah, thank you.
Haribol. So, this, this section is a little bit, heavy, you can say, in certain ways. Some ways you can say it's quite, what do you say? It feels like inhumane sometimes when you read these kind of things, because how can the son say he's not connected to the father? The father did so much. And I won't go into so much detail, but I'm going to say this very clearly. We have one book written by Gaurang Darshan Prabhu, an amazing devotee. And this is the book we use generally in helping us with these chapter summaries. This chapter, normally the chapter is summarized in maybe 3 pages. This chapter is summarized in 8 pages. Thank you, Prem Bhakti Prabhu. This chapter is summarized in 8 pages because it has that many lessons. So I will not go into all that philosophy, but I'm going to make it very clear. If you really want to enjoy the nectar of this chapter, please do actually read Srila Prabhupada's book. You can read all the purports. I'm only going to select a very few things from this section. So, the dead child is brought back to life by the potency of Narad Muni. And he begins speaking to his parents. And the essence of his speech is this: in many lifetimes I have had many fathers and mothers. Which father and mother are you, and why should I worry about you? That is the essence of his speech. He then gives some analogy in The 6th verse, he explains, as gold or any other good is bought and sold, and it's moved from one person to another. The living entity also moves like that, wanders. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasada Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. We are wandering throughout this material world. So much wandering. And, we move from one lifetime to another. When you sell gold to someone else and they damage that gold, you do not lament, because it's their gold at that point. So then he makes the analogy that, look, if you think not just gold, you can think of it like an animal as well. Animal also. You buy an animal, then you sell an animal. After that, you don't have any more connection with that. So the essence of these verses, which are very deep, very philosophical, is very simply, the material relation is not the ultimate relationship. Okay? Now you might say, how can we practically understand this? Because realistically, you all knew that philosophy anyway. The practical understanding of this is not that one neglects their material relationships. Because, of course, dharma is important, material dharma. It's there for this world to function. If we do not carry out our material dharmic activities, then this world does not function. So Krishna says to Arjuna that one should carry out their dharma, their duty. But instead of thinking that that duty is the be-all and end-all, they should see that that duty is a small part of a bigger picture. That's how they should see their duty. And so then, of course, we hear these instructions about the Supreme Lord. Where is this? 9. The living being is so sublime that he's equal in quality to the Supreme Lord. We are not matter, we are spirit, we are Brahman. Krishna is also Brahman. We are divine, God is divine. That does not mean we are the same as God, but it means our nature is godly. It's not of this world. If I can find something, if I cannot find the happiness that my soul searches for in this world, I must understand that I am made for another world. This is that point, right? The soul is not just the end of the story. It's not that your relationships are temporary. There is still an eternal relationship that you do have. Okay? So the basics of this world's interactions is relationships. Relationships actually drive this world going around, because relationship forces activity. If you have a feeling of responsibility, then only you will do an activity. Right? And so relationships, they force responsibility, which forces activity. So it's not that we give up all activity, because there is still a real relationship. And so our real relationship, while all of these things are changing, our real relationship is that which is connected to Krishna. And so while taking care of all these temporary relationships, our eternal relationship should also be our priority. And this is then further discussed. Many of you may have heard of this analogy of the pot and the mud, but the idea is very simple. We should not be affected by the material things too much. We should see them as part of the bigger picture. So I won't go into that detail, because of course all devotees understand that. Then the co-wives, they atone for their sinful activity under the direction of the Brahmanas. And then Chitraketu Maharaj, he finally kind of kickstarts his devotional life. So if you look, Angira Muni came first time. That time Chitraketu Maharaj said, please give me a son. So he gave him a son. Now, Angira Muni brings Narad Muni, because now Chitraketu is ready for the spiritual life. And so Narad Muni will instruct him in those spiritual teachings, because already he came to Angira, some of that previous mood may stay there, of still asking for a son. So that's why Angira Muni, he has brought another person, Narad Muni. Because if Angira Muni is there, then Chitraketu Maharaj, he might say, remembering those same thoughts, he might say again, Angira Muni, please can you give me another son? So this time, another person is there, even stronger. This is the plan of the devotees. They don't let you get away from the spiritual life. They introduce you to one devotee, then they introduce you to another devotee, then they introduce you to another devotee. Before you knew it, you only know devotees. You forget all the materialists around you. So this is Angira Muni's spiritual plan as well. He's doing the same thing. And now Narad Muni will give the instructions. So this is this first section. Now if we can have a devotee to read from verses 18 to 25, Narad Muni's instructions to Maharaj Chitraketu.
Puneshwari Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Text 18 to 19. Narad gave Chitraketu the following mantra. O Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, who are addressed by the Omkar, Pranav, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O Lord Vasudev, I meditate upon you. O Lord Pradyumna, Lord Anirudh, and Lord Shankarshna, I offer you my respectful obeisances. O reservoir of spiritual potency, O Supreme Bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are self-sufficient and most peaceful. Prabhuji, can you just roll it up a bit? Because I can only see your... O reservoir of spiritual potency, O supreme bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are self-sufficient and most peaceful. O ultimate truth, one without a second, you are realized as Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan, and are therefore the reservoir of all knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 20. Perceiving your personal bliss, you are always transcendental to the waves of material nature. Therefore, my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. You are the supreme controller of the senses, and your expansions of form are unlimited. You are the greatest, and therefore I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 21. The words and mind of the conditioned soul cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for material names and forms are not applicable to the Lord, who is entirely spiritual, beyond the conception of gross and subtle forms. The impersonal Brahman is another of his forms. May he, by his pleasure, protect us. Text 22. As pots made completely of earth are situated on earth after being created and are transformed into earth again when broken, this cosmic manifestation is caused by the Supreme Brahman, situated in the Supreme Brahman and annihilated in the same Supreme Brahman. Therefore, since the Supreme Lord is the cause of Brahman, let us offer him our respectful obeisances. Text 23. The Supreme Brahman emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and expands like the sky. Although untouched by anything material, it exists within and without. Nonetheless, the mind, intelligence, senses, and living force can neither touch him nor know him. I offer unto him my respectful obeisances. Text 24. As iron has the power to burn when made red hot in the association of fire, so the body, senses, living force, mind, and intelligence, although merely lumps of matter, can function in their activities when infused with a particle of consciousness by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As iron cannot burn unless heated by fire, the bodily senses cannot act unless favored by the Supreme Brahman. Text 25. O Transcendental Lord, who are situated in the topmost planet of the spiritual world, your two lotus feet are always massaged by a multitude of the best devotees with the lotus bud hands. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, complete in 6 opulences. You are the Supreme Person mentioned in the Purusha Sukta prayers. You are the most perfect, self-realized master of all mystic power. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. So, these are the prayers that Narad Muni is instructing Chitraketu to recite. Chitraketu Maharaj needs to recite these prayers. And so what does he do at the beginning? He establishes that, yes, my Supreme Lord, I am offering prayers unto you. Unto the, you might have heard the devotees, Chaturvyuha. So the Lord has many different forms of Vishnu. There is not just one form of Vishnu. In fact, there are 24 forms of Vishnu. But I won't go into that science now. If any of you are interested in the maths, the Lord has 4 different items which he holds. Can anyone name the 4 items that Lord Vishnu holds?
The lotus flower, the disc, Sudarshan Chakra, and
The conch shell.
a conch.
Conch shell, and of course the Gada as well. Yeah. So Shankha Chakra Gada Padma. The disc, the flower, the conch, and the mace. And so each Lord Vishnu differs in the positioning of these items. And so therefore there are 24 Lord Vishnus, 4 factorial. But of those 24 Vishnus, there are 4 which are most prominent. They are namely Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Sankarshana, and Vasudeva. And so he begins by offering obeisances unto Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Sankarshana. Right? This is the beginning. That he's taking shelter of the 4 different Chaturvyuha forms of the Lord. And those verses often devotees recite them. These are quite common. This is the verse. Om Namastubhyam Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumna Aniruddhaya Namas Sankarshanaya Cha. So this you can offer if you are meditating on the Supreme Lord as well. Generally, this is the way that we begin. Then he explains that you are realized as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the spiritual knowledge, the supreme absolute truth is realized in 3 different levels. And Srila Prabhupada dedicates a massive purport to explaining this. Brahman is when they understand the level, the spiritualist understands the level of Sat, eternity. Everything is all existing because of the Supreme. Paramatma is when the spiritualist understands the Lord is present in my heart. He's there, he's separate from me, he's present in my heart. And Bhagavan is when the devotee, he realizes I can interact with the Lord, I can have pastimes with the Lord, I can love the Lord. And so in this way, from Brahman to Paramatma to Bhagavan, there is gradual elevation of spiritual understanding. Srila Prabhupada explains throughout these verses that the Jnanis, one who uses just logic, he can understand up till the point of Brahman. The Ashtanga yogis who meditate in the forest, deeply meditate on the Supreme Lord, they can understand up to the point of Paramatma. But it is the devotee, and the devotee alone, who can understand Bhagavan. So the Bhakti yogi can understand. And Krishna says this again in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, not karma mama vijanati, not jnana mama vijanati. He says, bhaktya mama vijanati. If you want to know me, you need to become a devotee. So this is what is mentioned here. So some of these verses, they focus on the Brahman feature. They talk about, my Lord, you are the impersonal Brahman, that you are sustaining the world as kind of an immovable, imperishable force throughout everywhere. And then ultimately, though, they come to the conclusion of the understanding of Bhagavan. And Bhagavan means you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with 6 opulences. Mahavibhuti Pataye is the words, full of 6 opulences. You are most perfect. And let me take care of your 2 lotus feet. Sometimes impersonalists, they will try and manipulate Bhagavatam and say, see, Brahman is supreme. But Narad Muni is making very clear, no, Brahman is just the start. The conclusion should be that you worship the lotus feet of the Lord. So this is the important point of this section. The first section we learned that material relationships are temporary and our real relationship is with Krishna. This section is telling us the ultimate understanding of Krishna is Bhagavan. Do you want to add anything, Nana?
No, I think that's fine. I think these are pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah. So there is a lot of nectar in the purports. The verses themselves are quite simple, but the purports are extremely juicy. The problem is there's not a single short purport. And what happens is in each purport, there is no summary purport. So we have to summarize like this, because in each purport, Prabhupada is really just enjoying describing in detail the Supreme Lord. And, you know, in a few of the verses prior, he really just goes deep into what is Brahman and why we need to understand this. I will say one more point that comes to mind actually. You might ask, Chitraketu is a devotee. Why is Narad Muni telling all of these things to him? Chitraketu Maharaj is a devotee. Does anyone know why? Why is such a focus on jnana there before bhakti? Meena Mataji.
That's because he did not have a son and he did desire a son. So obviously, when he got that son, he got attached. He forgot all, or it wasn't not forgotten, but yeah, it was there in the background. But he got so attached to his material, to his son, his material body of the son, so that when he died, then he lamented as well.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mataji. It's exactly that. Jnana is not our process, but sometimes a teeny bit of jnana is used to kickstart bhakti. Because until you get a little bit angry with the world, you cannot take shelter of Krishna. So sometimes Krishna makes the jnani into a devotee, but many times spiritualists, they start off with jnana. You know, you'll see many of our devotees in the ISKCON movement who are great leaders today, they began kind of as spiritual seekers, jnanis. But what does Krishna say? Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvimiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. The jnani finds his perfection as the bhakti yogi, as you are explaining very nicely, Mataji. So thank you so much. Okay. So then, from verses 26 to 33, Chitraketu Maharaj will follow this prayers, the path that is outlined by Narad Muni, and we will see what happens to him. Verses 26 to 33. Can we have any devotees reading?
You want me to read?
Yes, Meena Mataji, please.
Thank you very much. Sri Shukdev Goswami continued. Narada, having become the spiritual master of Chitraketu, instructed him fully in this prayer because Chitraketu was fully surrendered. O King Parikshit, Narad then left with the great sage Angira for the topmost planet known as Brahmaloka. Fasting and drinking only water, Chitraketu for 1 week continuously chanted with great care and attention the mantra given by Narad Muni. O King Parikshit, after only 1 week of repeatedly practicing the mantra received from the spiritual master, Chitraketu achieved the rule of the planet of the Vidyadharas as an intermediate product of his spiritual advancement and knowledge. Thereafter, within a very few days, by the influence of the mantra that Chitraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress, and he attained the shelter at the lotus feet of Anantadeva. Upon reaching the shelter of Lord Shesha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chitraketu saw that he was as white as the white fibers of a lotus flower. He was dressed in bluish garments and adorned with a brilliantly glittering helmet, armlets, belt, and bangles. His face was smiling, and his eyes were reddish. He was surrounded by such exalted, liberated persons as Sanat Kumar. As soon as Maharaj Chitraketu saw the Supreme Lord, he was cleansed of all material contamination and situated in his original Krishna consciousness, being completely purified. He became silent and grave, and because of love for the Lord, tears fell from his eyes, and his hairs stood on end. With great devotion and love, he offered his respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead. With tears of love and affection, Chitraketu repeatedly moistened the resting place of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Because his voice was choked in ecstasy, for a considerable time he was unable to utter any of the letters of the alphabet to offer the Lord suitable prayers. Thereafter, by controlling his mind with his intelligence and thus restricting his senses from external engagements, he recovered suitable words with which to express his feelings. Thus he began offering prayers to the Lord, who is the personification of the Holy Scriptures, the Satvata Samhitas, like the Brahma Samhita and Narad Pancharatra, and who is the spiritual master of all. He offered his prayers as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji. So in this section, we hear that Chitraketu Maharaj, he offered these prayers for 7 days. And please note, this is a very important point. After 7 days, he of course saw Lord Sankarshan. But there is a brief mention of what happens as well. Sorry, after 7 days, I made a mistake, my mistake. After 10 days, he actually sees Sankarshan. But after 7 days, he becomes the ruler of the Vidyadharas. This is a bit random, you'll say. There was no mention of Vidyadhara planet ruling or anything. Narad Muni didn't make him sign a contract and say, oh yes, when you follow this, I'm going to give you some management as well that you have to take care of. So then how did he become king? In the same body, he became the king of the Vidyadhara planet. And so it's explained in the purport by Srila Prabhupada that when we are doing devotional service, sometimes as a byproduct we get material advancements. For example, if you are singing, for example, very nicely, then someone will come and tell you, wow, you are such an amazing singer. And you'll get some opulence and name and fame. So this is not the goal of the spiritual life. It sometimes might come in the process, but we should not become distracted by the goal. So by these things on the side, we should not become distracted from our goal. This is a very important point. So yes, he carried on, but he didn't stop. You see, he became Vidyadhara king, he carried on. So maybe we make some material advancement because of spiritual life, but we should not become distracted. We continue. So what is supreme for us is not the goal actually, it's the process of devotional service. That's why it's said for a devotee when they die, there is no death. And I used to find this very hard, but I was recently listening to Srila Prabhupada lecture, and he said, there is no death because I am serving Krishna here, today, and I will serve Krishna tomorrow as well. And so I will still have to deal with devotees. I will still have to deal with devotees causing problems in the spiritual world. One gopi will tell like this, another gopi tells like that. You have to deal, he said. He said, I will still have to deal with problems that devotees are causing. I will still have to deal with serving Krishna and how I can serve Krishna. Some problem will come in my service. So he said, for me, there is no difference. Today I'm serving with you all. Tomorrow I'm serving there. So this is the mood of a devotee. The process of devotion is supreme for us, not the goal of devotion. Another way of wording this, the goal of devotion is the process of devotion. You can think of it in that concept. So there is no end. You know, we want to serve, we serve so that we can serve, and when we get more service, we serve more so that we can serve more. There is no out of that. So then he sees Lord Anantadev, and he tries to offer prayers, but his voice becomes choked up. And there are a lot of prayers in this chapter.
I'll show the picture of,
Oh yes, please. Oh yes, this is important. Yes. So there are a lot of prayers in this chapter, and because of time, we will not be able to discuss every single one. Would you like to say?
Yeah, so this is Chitraketu Maharaj, and you can see the 4 Kumaras. I think they're everywhere.
They don't stop.
They go everywhere. This is Lord Sankarshan. Looks like a Christmas tree behind the Sankarshan, Lord Sankarshan. That's where the Christmas tree is coming from.
Yes.
You had seen the Lord face to face, Lord Sankarshan.
So this is the same form that Lord Shiva worships. This is a very important point. Remember, Chitraketu Maharaj and Lord Shiva are god brothers, and if you still don't recognize what the clue I'm saying is, god brothers always fight. There is no time in the history of the universe that god brothers have not fought. This is a natural thing that happens. So Chitraketu Maharaj and Lord Shiva are god brothers. And so they both worship this form of Lord Sankarshan.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
So I have selected several verses. I'm going to ask devotees to read these verses, these translations, and we'll relish some points from the purport. I have heard before from Tamal Krishna Maharaj that Srila Prabhupada really liked these prayers offered by Chitraketu Maharaj. And he used to give classes on these prayers a lot. So if you do research on Veda base, you will find lots of classes on these verses. The reason for this is because the theme throughout these verses is the glorification of devotional service over the processes of jnana and karma. And so the exclusive nature of bhakti is what is described deeply in those verses. So I'm going to share my screen. So initially, where is the verse? So initially he begins with this verse. I'll read the translation, another devotee can read part of the purport. Chitraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. Can we have a volunteer to read the first paragraph of this purport, please?
I can read for you, Vivek.
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Purport. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. The gopis conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopis. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopis, and without seeing the gopis, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as Gyanis and Yogis, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. Krishna.
Hare Krishna. What do I have to add? Srila Prabhupada has explained so beautifully. The Lord conquers the devotee conquers the Lord. The gopis of Vrindavan, they think, Krishna, I am yours, and more importantly, they think, Krishna, you are mine. Okay? So this is the mentality of the pure devotees, that they have conquered Krishna and Krishna is conquered them. And so there is nothing for them but Krishna. And for Krishna, there is nothing but his devotees. So he only sees them. So this is something, if you explain for a logician, a jnani, oh yes, Krishna is unconquerable, but at the same time he's conquered. He will say you have a logical fallacy. Because this is not understood in terms of rational logic. Love of the devotees and the Lord is beyond this conception completely. Krishna is conquered by the devotees are conquered by Krishna. They both exist at the same time. Okay, this is the power of the loving relationship of the devotee. And so, a little secret is Chitraketu is giving for us. Krishna, we have not conquered. If we want to conquer Krishna, we have to become a devotee. But more importantly, there are already existing devotees who have already conquered Krishna. So if we take shelter of those devotees, then we'll be able to conquer Krishna. One time a Mayavadi was arguing with Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, bring that picture of Mother Yashoda chasing Krishna. So one devotee brought that picture. And he said, you want to become like him? You want to merge into his existence? Okay? You want to become God? He said, we don't want to become God. We want to become like her. Huh? I will make you greater than God, he said. Come become a devotee. So in this way, the devotee engages in relationships, pastimes with the Supreme Lord. And these pastimes are beyond our material conception. Chitraketu Maharaj goes on to glorify the opulence of the Lord. And then he goes on to glorify the devotee. But just before he goes on to glorify the devotee, he makes a little statement about those who are not devotees of the Lord. And this is in verse number 38 and 39. So do we have anyone to read those two translations, please?
I can read
There's
it.
nobody I can read.
Okay, Mataji, go on.
Bhuvaneshwari Mataji. Okay.
What am I reading, Prabhuji?
Verse 38 and 39, back translations.
Okay. Text 38. O Lord, O supreme, unintelligent persons who thirst for sense enjoyment and who worship various demigods are no better than animals in the human form of life. Because of their animalistic propensities, they fail to worship your lordship, and instead they worship the insignificant demigods, who are but small sparks of your glory. With the destruction of the entire universe, including the demigods, the benedictions received from the demigods also vanish, just like the nobility when a king is no longer in power. Text 39. O Supreme Lord, if persons obsessed with material desires for sense gratification through material opulence worship you, who are the source of all knowledge and are transcendental to material qualities, they are not subject to material rebirth. Just as sterilized or fried seeds do not produce plants, living entities are subjected to the repetition of birth and death because they are conditioned by material nature. But since you are transcendental, one who is inclined to associate with you in transcendence escapes the conditions of material nature. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So, it's very simply explained here. If one has material opulence and worships the demigods, Chitraketu Maharaj says that is very low intelligence. He says if we have material desire and we have material ambition, worship Krishna. Still worship Krishna. Akamaha sarvakamova mokshakama udharati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham padam. If we have no desire, if we have all desires, or if we are desiring liberation from material existence, tivrena bhakti yogena, by engaging in intense devotional service, yajeta purusham padam, one will still achieve the highest goal. So, Srila Prabhupada used to tell Revati Nandan Maharaj, always he used to say this, if you do not chant, your actions will be like karma. Even your spiritual activities, like deity worship. If you do not chant, your activities will become like karma. But as soon as you chant, then even your karma will become into bhakti. So this is that point that is mentioned here. If we worship the Lord, worship in this age means chanting Hare Krishna. So if we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, then even if we do some material duty, dharma, some material occupation, you work in the world, no problem. You will not have any karmic bondage. Because it's like fried seeds. You cannot produce a tree after you fry the seeds. So therefore, chant is what the conclusion is. Prabhupada used to tell Revati Nandan Maharaj. Because Revati Nandan Maharaj, he was very interested in university programs. So he used to say, Srila Prabhupada, maybe I can stop chanting and I can do university programs. Prabhupada said, no. You have to chant. Because if you do not chant, your activities become karma. But if you do chant, your karma becomes bhakti. Okay? So this is the point which is mentioned here. Finally, this is not there. 44. I'll read the translation. My Lord, it is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. I'll read that again. It is not impossible for one to be immediately freed from all material contamination by seeing you. Not to speak of seeing you personally, merely by hearing the holy name of your Lordship only once. Even Chandalas, men of the lowest class, are freed from material contamination. Under the circumstances, who will not be freed from material contamination simply by seeing you? So he's saying, if I see you, obviously I have no more material distress. But not even seeing, because then we will feel so sad. Oh, well, we cannot see Krishna. So he's giving us confidence. He's giving us hope. You don't have to see. Actually, you have to hear. Our biggest problem is that even we cannot do. Chanting is meant to be done chanting and hearing, but we don't like to hear. We like to still hear our mind. But if we hear just once, then we can achieve the greatest goal. We'll get freed from all material contamination. This is the power of the holy name of the Lord. And finally, he mentions, therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narad Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narad Muni. So he says, material, lusty things, all of that is gone because of seeing you. And the reason for this is because the words of Narad Muni came true. In fact, they will be true. And I'm here only because of the mercy of Narad Muni. What does that mean for us? One time a disciple just asked Srila Prabhupada, I want to get rid of my material desires. Srila Prabhupada said, okay, you try chant Hare Krishna. A few years later, he again went to Prabhupada, I want to get rid of my material desires. Yeah, it's okay, you keep on trying. Then the third time he asked Srila Prabhupada said, Govindicha. When Krishna wants, actually. That time you can get rid of material desires. The point is, lusty desire, material desire, we will not get rid of. We have to engage in devotional service. Krishna will get rid of those things. And how can we be confident of this statement? How can we be confident in this process? Because the words of Narad Muni are true. The words of the Guru come true. Srila Prabhupada said, one who does pure devotional service for 12 years, whatever he says, it will become true. So, of course, for us, this is a little bit difficult, but what does it mean? It means Srila Prabhupada gave us one guarantee. You chant 16 rounds, you follow 4 regulative principles, I will take you back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee. And so his words will come true. In fact, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, when they were passing away, it's a very sad story, but I won't tell the sad part, I'll tell the happy part. They had a really bad cancer, pancreatic cancer. Terrible. And they were in excruciating pain, as in visibly you could see emancipation in the face and you could see all of that. In the final seconds of their body, they just got up like this, lying down. They got up. And he said, in Italian was his mother tongue, he said, Srila Prabhupada didn't cheat us. What Srila Prabhupada said is true, and he gave a thumbs up to the devotees like this. Srila Prabhupada told us the truth, and then he left his body. All of a sudden, he was in incredible pain, and then all of a sudden he got up and said, yeah, Srila Prabhupada told us the truth. Like that. And he was, in Italian, he was shouting, it's a miracle, I see him. So this is the process. Whatever faith you have or you do not have, one should have complete faith in the words of Srila Prabhupada. This is very, very important for us. So these are the prayers that are offered by Chitraketu Maharaj. They glorify the process of devotional service. They glorify the holy names of the Lord. And they glorify the service of the spiritual master who is following the Lord. So a simple conclusion of this is that bhakti is supreme. Vishnu Bhakti or Krishna Bhakti is supreme. Vishnu Bhakti or Krishna Bhakti via the holy names is best. And Vishnu Bhakti or Krishna Bhakti via the holy names under the direction of the Guru is the conclusion. So our process, serve Krishna by chanting his holy name and follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, just one point here, here Chitraketu Maharaj followed the process set forth by his spiritual master Narad Muni. Also, if you remember well, go back to the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dhruva Maharaj, for Dhruva Maharaj also initially said, come on, you are only little boy, and you are also Kshatriya, prince. Come on, you just go back. What are you trying to do? So no, but Dhruv said, no, if you have something, you tell, otherwise leave from here. So Narada Muni given him the process of worshipping the Supreme Lord. And Dhruv Maharaj followed it, exactly what he was told to do so. This is also, instruction for us that Prabhupada set forth some instructions for all of us. Then if we follow, you will also see the result. But
we will see the results.
Yeah. So that miracle, like what Srila mentioned, that would happen to us as well. But we have to follow the process.
So our success is guaranteed because Srila Prabhupada made that statement. And if your doubt is coming, just think any statement. Prahlad Maharaj, he said, my Lord is in this pillar. Therefore, Lord Narasimhadev had to come. Satyam vidhatum nijabhritya bhashitam. To keep the words of the devotee true. So even though maybe no one else said 16 rounds and 4 regs will take you back to Godhead, you might say, well, I haven't seen that verse. Where is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Where does it say 16 rounds and 4 regs back to Godhead? I never seen that verse. It doesn't matter. Srila Prabhupada said it, it will become true. So this much confidence we should have in the service of the spiritual master and the service of Srila Prabhupada. And so he offers these beautiful prayers. And then, of course, Lord Vishnu, he also responds. And he responds from verse 50 to verse 65. Many of those points you can read, and Srila Prabhupada writes huge purports. Actually, the half of this chapter is just in the prayers and this response. But the major verse with a massive purport is this one. Can we have one devotee to read the verse 59 translation, please?
Yeah, go on, please.
Text 59. Remembering the great trouble found in the field of activities performed for fruitive results, and remembering how one receives the reverse of the results one desires, whether from material actions or from the fruitive activities recommended in the Vedic literature, an intelligent man should cease from the desire for fruitive actions. For by such endeavors, one cannot achieve the ultimate goal of life. On the other hand, if one acts without desires for fruitive results, in other words, if one engages in devotional activities, he can achieve the highest goal of life with freedom and miserable conditions. Considering this, one should cease from material desires.
Thank you, Prema Bhakti Prabhuji. So there you go, Prema Bhakti Prabhu, how fitting that Prema Bhakti Prabhu is telling us this statement. That if we engage in material activity, we will become miserable. For some reason, we don't believe it. I don't know why we don't believe it. That's how conditioned we are. But if we engage in material activity, we will have misery. So the only way out is by engaging in devotional service. Which devotional service? Devotional service of Lord Vishnu. By what process? Chanting the holy name. Under who? Under the Guru. So if you just remember that formula, we will be completely successful. We have to remember the Lord. We have to remember the Lord in our activities. And so we must engage in devotional service. So therefore, Lord Krishna is saying, Lord Vishnu is saying, that this is how you can achieve me. Saying this, he goes on to explain, O king, if you accept this conclusion of mine, being unattached to material enjoyment, adhering to me with great faith, and thus becoming proficient and fully aware of knowledge and its practical application in life, you will achieve the highest perfection by attaining me. Okay? So we need to learn the knowledge, and we need to learn its practical application in the life. And if we do that, then we can achieve Lord Krishna. This is his own words, not my words. This is Krishna's words. That you will achieve me if you understand this knowledge and its application in life, and you engage in devotional service. So in this way, the Supreme Lord disappears from view. And this is how Chitraketu Maharaj became an elevated, great devotee. Then you might have a question. That the same question Parikshit Maharaj had, which is, hold on, Vritrasura becomes Chitraketu because Vritrasura is a devotee because he used to be Chitraketu and that time he became a devotee. How did he become a demon then? He's seen Lord Narayan. I mean, literally, did he not say himself, I've seen you, I have no more material contamination, I have no more lust, no more greed. I've seen you. I chant your holy names, I've followed this process, and the Lord himself is responding. I mean, how much purer can you get than that? Why did he become a demon, is the obvious question. And for that, you'll have to join next week to see why did Chitraketu Maharaj become Vritrasura. So, in conclusion of today's session, the dead child comes back to life and talks about how material relationships are temporary, and so we shouldn't become too attached in them. And the spiritual relationships are the ultimate reality, and that's what we should focus on. Then Narad Muni instructs Chitraketu Maharaj in the chanting of these prayers. These prayers, they highlight that the Lord is the Supreme. He can be understood in Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan features, but the Bhagavan feature is the topmost, and that's only understood by the devotee. Chitraketu Maharaj follows that process. On the way, he becomes the king of the Vidyadhara planet, but he doesn't get distracted by his material material opulence which came. He doesn't get distracted, and he continues. Because he continues, he is able to take the darshan of Lord Anantadev. He then offers beautiful prayers to Lord Anantadev, to Lord Sankarshana. And in offering these prayers, he glorifies the process of devotional service unto Lord Krishna, the chanting of the holy name, and the need for the Guru. And then the Lord responds. And the Lord responds by stating that those devotees of the Supreme and one who understands this philosophy should engage in devotional service and no longer engage in the material activity. He gives his guarantee that Chitraketu Maharaj will come to him. And then he disappears. So the lessons for us: material relationships are not the ultimate relationships. Our relationship with Krishna is supreme. Bhagavan is the topmost feature of the Lord. That's understood only through the process of devotional service. Worship Krishna even if you have material desires. Chant the holy names and follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And if we do this, and we learn how to do this in real life, then we will also see Krishna face to face someday. So thank you all, dear devotees, for joining this session. Please join us next time to find out how Chitraketu Maharaj becomes Vritrasra. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you
Krishna
so much.
Prabhuji,
Thank you
Pranam.
very much.
Hare
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.
Hari.
Prabhuji, what was that book you shared? You showed Gauranga Darshan Das. Can you put it on the?
I'm gonna lose my job now. I'm gonna lose my job.
No, you won't.
Bhagavata Bodhani.
Okay. Bhagavata Sibodhini. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions before we conclude completely?
Yes, Prabhu. Will we be continuing chapters 50 to 65 next week, please?
Chapters or verses, you mean?
Verses.
Sorry, the verses 50 to 65.
I mean, Sundar Chetan, because it's a long chapter, he skipped some of the verses and he only did few verses. So maybe it's a good idea if you can sit down at home and go through those verses, because it's 65 verses. So he skipped some of the verses.
It was chapters 50 to 65, Prabhu. 50.
Chapters or verses?
Sorry, I beg that. The texts 50 to 65, which is 15 texts.
Yeah. You covered some of the senses, isn't it?
I covered the main conclusion, which is the devotional service. Prabhu, yeah, we can discuss them in the next chapter as well, because the next chapter is a simple story actually. I won't leak too much information here, but yes, that's a good idea. We can read them next time.
All right. Thanks very much, Prabhu. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think that's the conclusion for today. Any devotees? Anything else?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.